to get an education. We're not paying to fund the genocide of the Palestinians.
Protesters angry about the war in Gaza digging in on university campuses, forming encampments as they demand action from their schools. Encampments that first formed at Columbia University in New York have now spread to schools all across the West. Good evening. Welcome to West Coast Wrap. I'm Alex Savage. In the Bay Area, tents have gone up in the middle of the San Francisco State University campus now. KTVU's Christian Captain shows us what demonstrators are demanding from administrators.
Hundreds of protesters filled Malcolm X Plaza on the San Francisco State University campus. Students calling for an end to the war in Gaza and for the university to divest investments from companies doing business with Israel.
CSU is investing hundreds of millions of dollars into the military-industrial complex, and we're not okay with that. That's our tuition money. We should have a say in where all that money goes.
Those students moving from the plaza to a nearby grassy area where they started the Bay Area's third encampment on a college campus. Media representatives for the campers say the encampment will send a clear message to school administrators.
Mainly, the divestment, what we're concerned about is the divestment on the behalf of the California State University system from the Israeli military.
Alumni returning to the campus say they're encouraged to see students fighting for what they believe in.
When I was on campus here, our movements were much smaller, so seeing this so huge here, I think it's really reassuring.
The newly formed Faculty for Justice in Palestine joined this latest protest. They're calling on the university to refrain from calling law enforcement to the campus, refrain from any academic retaliation against students who are protesting, and for the administrators to respect the students' right to protest.
Our role here as faculty is to uplift and amplify what our students are trying to get through, not just on this campus, but across the United States.
The university says it respects the rights of community members to protest while preserving a safe campus environment. In a statement, it added, quote, "The SF State Foundation investment policy reflects its commitment to the values of the university, prioritizing social and racial justice, environmental sustainability, and climate action." At this point, there's no word on when exactly this encampment will end or whether there are any negotiations underway between the university and protesters. On the San Francisco State University campus, Christian Captain, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
In Central California, pro-Palestinian demonstrators have set up an encampment at Sacramento State University on the Library Quad. It's organized by a group called Students for Justice in Palestine. Demonstrators say these tents are designed to get the school's attention.
If camping is what we have to do to get our voices heard and the trustees to be forced to listen to us, then that is what the students will do.
Similar to protests at campuses across the country, this group is calling on CSU to divest from Israel. In Los Angeles, USC President Carol Folt reportedly met with student protesters this afternoon. That campus remains closed to non-students and staff as a resurgence of protesters over the weekend prompted a tactical alert by the LAPD. No arrests were made over the weekend at USC, but the Tommy Trojan statue was vandalized. And across town, UCLA is increasing security around a pro-Palestinian protest encampment on campus. About 50 tents are set up, and they're keeping the public and media out. This comes one day after some minor scuffles with pro-Israeli demonstrators. In Seattle, protesters have set up a similar encampment on the University of Washington's Quad. The school's Progressive Student Union is asking the university to divest from supporting the Israeli government financially and to cut ties with Boeing. And in Texas, protests continued today at the University of Texas at Austin. A number of people reportedly arrested after a dispersal order was given to the crowd gathering on the campus's South Mall. A large group of state troopers were seen moving in on the protesters while the crowds chanted, "Leave our campus." Police tonight are investigating an attack on a Las Vegas Golden Knights fan that left him severely injured. It happened last week outside an NHL playoff game in Dallas. The victim, Jason Bowen, lives in Texas but grew up in Vegas, and he's a proud fan of the Knights. He says he was waiting for a ride after the game with his fiancée when words were exchanged with a few Dallas Stars fans. He says a man came up from behind and hit him in the face, knocking him to the ground and sending him to the hospital.
While they were talking to me in my face, this guy came out of nowhere and just clobbered me. That was it.
Boeing has been spreading the word on social media, hoping to track down the person who assaulted him. He filed a police report, but said he hasn't heard anything yet from the Golden Knights, the Stars, or American Airlines Center, where that attack happened. Testimony continued today in the Chad Daybell murder trial. He's the Idaho man accused of killing his wife's 2 children from Arizona. He's also accused of murdering his first wife, Tammy Daybell. Today, the jury heard from one of Daybell's relatives and an expert on phone records. Prosecutors in this case say sex, money, and power led to the 3 murders, but defense attorneys suggest Daybell's wife was behind all of it. She was convicted of those murders last year. An autopsy reveals a Colorado woman whose remains were found last year may have been killed. Suzanne Morphew was reported missing in 2020 after going on a bike ride in Chaffee County. Her remains were found 3 years later, 50 miles south of her home. Today, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation said testing on the remains that were found shows evidence of drugs used to tranquilize wildlife. Nearly a year after Morphew's disappearance, her husband, Barry Morphew, was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, but those charges were later dropped. He has maintained his innocence. In Oregon, a steel bridge in Portland is back open tonight after a freight train derailment this morning. As Fox's Paulina Aguilar shows us, this derailment caused some major disruptions to traffic.
Crews have been working all day to clear this area. At about 1:30 this afternoon, they used what looks like a bulldozer. They've added some equipment to it to put all of the train cars back on its track. Then about a half an hour later, another freight train arrived. Crews hooked it onto the 2 tanks and a car from the back end of that train and removed them. But plenty of work still needs to get done.
Fire dispatch is calling a train derailment response eastbound Steel Bridge at the east end.
A train derailment on Portland's Steel Bridge. Union Pacific say their train was headed westbound into their Lake rail yard when 5 of their train cars spilled off the tracks. Portland Fire and Rescue arrived on scene just after 6 a.m. Monday morning.
We have a couple of callers now reporting that there's a train that has partially derailed on the bridge. 3 to 4 cars are leaning over. Second caller advised that they tried to reverse at one point and it has gotten worse.
One of the cars leaning into a support column.
And I would recommend a complete closure of the bridge, both for pedestrians and all traffic.
This isn't the first time something like this has happened. In March of 2018, another freight train also fell off its track in the same area, just yards away. It's unclear what caused the wreck near the Moda Center, but it did cause multiple delays for commuters in the morning.
Everything is using that bridge. So when you take the bridge out of action, you're taking a lot of the transportation picture of the downtown Portland area out of action, and it's a problem.
Coming back, it was okay, but early this morning, it was threw us off.
The train is Eddie's main transportation, and today he used it to go to work.
When we got up this morning, we didn't know where the trains was, why they wasn't running, and then we also had to ride the buses.
Union Pacific confirmed all the rail cars were empty. There were no leaks, no injuries, and Union Pacific will handle the investigation. The Steel Bridge remains open for all public transportation, buses, trains, cars, pedestrians, bicycles. Crews will continue to work and hope to clear the area as soon as possible. Reporting in North Portland, Paulina Aguilar, Fox 12 Oregon.
In Arizona, a major highway is back open tonight following a fiery train derailment. It happened Friday along Interstate 40 in Lupton, right near the Arizona-New Mexico border. About a half dozen cars jumped the tracks. Some of those cars were carrying propane and they caught fire. That huge fireball could be seen from the interstate. A stretch of road near the train tracks was shut down for a time and some nearby homes were evacuated, but all of those evacuation orders have since been lifted. California is purchasing its own opioid overdose reversal drug. It is a lower-priced generic version of Narcan. The state is buying naloxone from a New Jersey-based pharmaceutical company for about 40% below the market rate. The reversal drug will eventually be available under the state's CalRx label. State Health and Human Services Secretary Dr. Mark Galley says it will be given to first responders, universities, and community organizations at no cost.
These life-saving, life-altering medications needed to be accessible and in reach, but also that they needed to be affordable at all levels for individuals, for health insurance companies, and for government entities like the state.
California is expected to buy around 3.2 million doses of naloxone every year. More than 13 million Kaiser Permanente members may have had their personal information exposed in a data breach. The California-based healthcare provider says online tools installed on its websites and mobile apps were involved here. Kaiser says about 13.4 million people will get a notification that personal information may have been transmitted to third-party vendors like Google, Microsoft, or X. Kaiser says the breach exposed patients' names and their health-related searches. The data did not include usernames, passwords, social security numbers, or financial account information. Kaiser says it has removed the online tools that were involved here and says it is not aware of any misuse of any personal information. This is an important week in Arizona's abortion debate. On Wednesday, state senators are expected to vote on repealing a near-total ban on the procedure. House lawmakers voted last week to repeal Arizona's 160-year-old ban. The 1864 law only allows for an abortion if the mother's life is at risk. It could take effect as soon as June 8th. If a repeal is passed in the Senate, Governor Katie Hobbs is expected to sign it into law, and that means Arizona's 15-week abortion ban would take effect. Coming up tonight here on West Coast Wrap, tornadoes tear through a number of states, killing several people. We'll take a closer look at the destruction that's led to some governors declaring states of emergency. Plus,
you know that high oil temps, low oil pressure is a recipe for disaster.
A small plane makes an emergency landing in a Southern California neighborhood. How the pilot was able to keep that aircraft from injuring anyone on the ground.
And giving you a live look here over the San Francisco Bay Area where the sun is beginning to set. Have a look at West Coast weather after the break.
At least 5 people have been killed, including an infant, as deadly tornadoes rip through parts of the U.S. More than 120 tornadoes plowed through 6 states in just a matter of a couple of days. At least 5 people have been killed, 4 in Oklahoma and 1 in Iowa. In Sulphur, Oklahoma, authorities say every business in that area appears to have been destroyed.
I know that everything I've ever worked for, put together, my father, my wife, my mom, is being torn apart, and there's nothing I can do.
A state of emergency has been declared for 12 counties in Oklahoma, while in Nebraska, the governor there has declared a state of emergency for 3 counties that were hit hardest by those tornadoes. California Governor Gavin Newsom next month will be flying to the Vatican to take part in the Vatican Climate Summit. This is hosted by Pope Francis, and Governor Newsom will speak at the Summit of Mayors and Governors. Aides to Governor Newsom say he'll talk about how California is affected by fires, floods, and droughts. The governor said he appreciates the leadership of the Pope on the climate crisis. Back in 2017, former Governor Jerry Brown also attended the Vatican Climate Summit when he was in office.
Well, over parts of the Pacific Northwest today, another round of rain and snow for the Cascades. Seattle coming in at 54 degrees this afternoon, so cool and soggy there. Meanwhile, in the desert Southwest, hot and dry, and for the state of California, sitting pretty in the 60s and 70s for the afternoon, although breezy and windy over parts, and I'll show you that here momentarily. As we roll through tonight and into tomorrow, we're still dealing with the Pacific Northwest wet weather. It dips into areas of the inner Mountain West, but you could see the state of California as well as the desert Southwest does remain dry tonight and expected to remain dry for tomorrow as well. These systems just continuing to roll through on and off over the course of the next few days, bringing the soggy weather to areas of the Seattle as well as Oregon. We are looking at dry weather for now in the Bay Area, but by the weekend that could change. That northwesterly flow that is settling in over the Bay Area and parts of California, bringing in the breezy conditions, and there's an even wind advisory for parts of Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Santa Clarita Hills and Mountains, as well as parts of the Santa Barbara County coastline here 40 to 60 miles per hour expected for the evening hours and perhaps into tomorrow. Meanwhile, near the coast of Los Angeles here in Santa Monica today, 75 degrees with mostly sunny skies. Just a beautiful one there. Getting into what we can expect for tomorrow, we start out with the wet weather and the high elevation snow continuing here in the Pacific Northwest, dipping into the inner mountain west for it looks like Thursday. It takes a day or so before it finally moves through. But for the California area as well as areas near Phoenix and New Mexico, going to remain dry into the afternoon with temperatures even a little bit above average for tomorrow. 60s for San Francisco area, 70s for the Los Angeles area. And here's a look at the 3-day forecast in the Pacific Northwest. It is going to be cool and soggy for Seattle tomorrow. Meanwhile, San Francisco looking at upper 60s, low 70s in Los Angeles and in the desert Southwest. It is baking. We've got 95 degrees expected for Phoenix tomorrow afternoon. Alex?
Yeah, they are cooking in Arizona. All right, Rosemary, thank you. A pilot was hurt when a small plane crashed right into a neighborhood outside of San Diego. This happened on Sunday night in El Cajon. Fox's Christelle Kumue tells us what investigators know about this crash, and she also has more tonight on the cleanup happening at that scene.
Now we know the pilot was transported to the hospital with moderate injuries, but he managed to avoid the homes but slid into a power line pole. An initial call about an aircraft standby at Gillespie Field turned into an aircraft emergency Sunday evening.
We were updated on the way here that the plane had actually crashed short of the airport, and so we responded here around 6:20 in the evening.
Here at Lilly and Clark Drive in this El Cajon neighborhood. Heartland Fire Battalion Chief John Nevin at the scene says the pilot reported engine problems, possibly leaking fuel before the crash.
He managed to avoid all the homes there, just the wires, and then slid into a power pole over there.
The plane did strike some power lines, affecting some homes. SDG&E responded and secured the power lines, which are no longer a hazard. The pilot was transported to Sharp Memorial with moderate injuries.
I was flying a Piper Cherokee. It's a PA-28 180 horsepower plane, similar to the one that crashed.
Sean McGurl says he was in the air at the same time and heard the pilot's distress call to the tower.
All of a sudden, we hear from a certain aircraft, they have more of a distress sound. They are a little bit more nervous in their tone, and they say they have a drop in oil pressure and a rise in oil temperature. Now, if you're a pilot or anybody who works within mechanics, you know that high oil temps, low oil pressure is a recipe for disaster.
He says when that happens, pilots are trained to land as soon as possible.
And landing as soon as possible doesn't necessarily just mean on a runway. It means exactly what this person did today. It means landing on a road, landing wherever is possible, and creating that successful outcome.
Authorities say no one else was injured in the incident. Now, the FAA will conduct an investigation in coordination with the El Cajon Police Department. And with that said, the scene here at Lilly and Clark Drive will be closed for several hours. Reporting in El Cajon, I'm Christelle Kumwe.
Members of a firefighters union at Boeing took to the picket lines today in Washington. The union, called the International Association of Firefighters Local I-66, demonstrated in both Renton and Everett after rejecting 2 prior contract proposals. The association is calling for better pay, career advancement, and safety standards. Local I-66 represents more than 120 firefighters who staff Boeing stations across Washington. Boeing tells our sister station, Fox 13 in Seattle, that today we are engaged in good faith negotiations with the union in the hopes that a deal can still be reached. Southwest Airlines is considering some changes to its well-known boarding and seating policies to try to increase revenue. Right now, Southwest has open seating, but travelers can pay extra to get on the plane first. Now, the airline is considering allowing people to pay for a specific seat selection. Southwest is also considering increasing fees to get an earlier boarding number, but the airline says its 2 bags fly free policy will not be changing. Coming up tonight here on West Coast Wrap, Britney Spears back in the spotlight, the concerns some are expressing for the singer's well-being. Plus,
able to provide for my family and my health.
the winner of a historic Powerball jackpot comes forward today in Portland. How the lucky lottery player is planning to use all of that money. Sean Diddy Combs has filed a motion to dismiss claims of human trafficking and revenge porn in his sexual assault lawsuit. In those filings, the rapper's team says the accusations are false, offensive, and salacious, adding that the accusations were brought under statutes that did not exist at the time of the alleged incident. The allegations come from Joy Dickerson Neal, who claims the artist intentionally drugged her back in 1991. Sources tell TMZ Britney Spears is worse off than she was while under conservatorship. Those same sources add the singer right now is in danger of going broke. As for her mental health, they say Spears is, quote, completely dysfunctional since she has no supervision. But those who remain close with the pop star tell a different story, claiming Spears is doing much better since she has more freedom. The claims follow a recent settlement between the 42-year-old and her estranged father. In Oregon, the lucky winner of a $1.3 billion Powerball jackpot last month has come forward. Cheng Charlie Seifan of Portland has had cancer for 8 years and had his latest chemotherapy treatment last week. He says he and his wife plan to split the prize evenly with a friend who chipped in $100 to buy a batch of tickets with them. They are taking a lump sum payment, $422 million after taxes.
My life has been changed. Now I can bless my family and find a good doctor for myself. And thank you very much.
That winning Powerball ticket was sold earlier this month at a convenience store in Portland, ending a winless streak that had stretched for more than 3 months. This week, the world-famous Pike Place Market in Seattle is helping kick off National Small Business Week. The market is celebrating its more than 500 vendors, which include local farmers, chefs, and craftspeople. Pike Place leaders are asking people to support local businesses by visiting the market, dining at locally owned restaurants, or taking in live music there. Small Business Week runs through May the 4th. A beloved Portland-based ice cream shop is adding several new flavors. This Friday, Salt and Straw is launching its Mayflower series. The company says these flavors are rooted in its love for the bounty of the Pacific Northwest and the florals that bloom in springtime. Some of the new flavors include lemon marigold amaro sherbet, spinach cake with chocolate tahini fudge, and rhubarb crumble with toasted anise. Officials from the San Diego Zoo flew to China to meet 2 pandas they will soon be caring for. Wildlife Alliance team leaders visited a pair of pandas that will be moving to the zoo. The older panda is described as mild-mannered and gentle. The younger bear is said to be witty with a sweet, round face. The exact date those bears will arrive in San Diego is not yet known. Finally tonight, pop star Billie Eilish revealing more about her upcoming world tour, which will include stops here in the West in Denver, Seattle, Portland, San Jose, Glendale, Arizona, and Inglewood, California. It's called the Hit Me Hard and Soft Tour, the same name as her album that comes out next month. That does it for West Coast Wrap. We appreciate you watching. A reminder before we go, you can stay up to date on everything we're covering at westcoastwrap.com, and you can stream our shows with the Fox Local app. Have a great night.